There is a myth in fighting games, and that myth is that fighting games are a battle of the mind. And it's kind of like a half myth, because it's true that fighting games are a battle of the mind, but they are also like a battle of systems. You are afforded strength by the game as well as your own decision making, but you access that decision making through the method of the strength that the game provides you. And the thing is, this is all video games. Every single game is a mix of you and the method of video games themselves, the way that the systems and state machines dictate what gameplay is. So even though fighting games are a battle of the minds, it's also a battle of the systems itself. And so the systems are important to understand, and what goes on in those systems dictates what happens in the game. I have a lot of Third Strike footage. I was going to scrap a video. Instead, we're making this. Hello. I think Third Strike as a game is pretty well balanced given the time that has passed since its release. You know, it isn't like League of Legends where if something goes wrong a month or a week later, you can go and patch out. If the Black Cleaver patch came out in, what, like 1999, they'd be fucked. So given that Third Strike is now, what, like 25 years old, something like that, I think it's done pretty well. There are some really obvious gaps in power, but those gaps in power are very minor relative to what could have happened. You know, you can pick basically anyone on character select and you're gonna do fine. There's obvious standouts and there's like ways that the game kind of breaks down. So like Chun, Ken, Yun, like these three characters, they're like very strong among like a top tier. And so if you play one of these characters, you're probably going to dictate the majority of the game portion of the game. And even like outside of this, there's elements of the game that are kind of like screwed up that dictate how the character should be played. So like Yun with Jinrai, I think that's what it's called, I can't really remember, and Yun with anything else are in two completely different like categories. I can't even tell you how big the distance is between these two characters because everyone uses Jinrai. You can see it in other characters as well. Urien, like Urien fucking, he's like a guy, he's like over here is like, he's dick naked, and like what is he gonna do? He can do like big tackle where he's going like fucking shoulder charge, brah. I don't know what he looks like when he does this. You know, he can do this and he can do a big fireball, but what is he realistically gonna be doing?
In the club doing Aegis for
this Urien does. This is Urien. He's over here, he's going da. This is Urien. To play a Urien that isn't doing this isn't to play a literally different character, but like you might as well be. Because this, Aegis Reflector, it isn't just like, oh, Urien does more damage. He has like a whole new option. This causing like unblockables. Unblockable. Oh my fucking hell. This is a bad idea. Aegis causing unblockables provides him a whole new angle of playing the game that will dictate the game plan. It is a method in which strength is afforded to the player via a whole new option. Someone playing Super 1 cannot wish their way to an unblockable setup. He just doesn't have them without Aegis. And that strength dictates the way that Urien is played. It dictates the way that Ken is played if he's playing Super 3. It dictates the way that Chun is being played if she's using Super 2? I don't play Chun-Li, I don't remember. All of these methods of strength dictate what the character is, and by that strength dictate what you as a player want to do. Your character's strength and your decision making are interlinked. But what strength is for all of those characters is going to be different. And what strength is in games, to me, is like interesting. And there's a character in Third Strike that I think demonstrates the idea of strength in games particularly well. I don't know how I'm going to bring this onto the screen, but it's Sean. The thing about Sean is that he sucks in kind of boring ways. You know, he's not like 12 where he's really weird and struggles to make like an effective game plan. Sean is a Shoto, but he fucking sucks. And it's that kind of closeness to other characters that are generally quite successful. You know, Akuma's really strong, Ryu's pretty good, like sure, he's mid-tier, but you pick Ryu, and you still have a very decent chance of winning. You pick Ken, you've got an even higher chance at winning. You pick Sean, you're playing like a very different game all of a sudden, even though fundamentally you might have some pretty similar tools. And a part of that is damage numbers, and to talk about that, I want to talk about something very different. The R8 in Counter-Strike, when it initially came out, was ridiculously broken. It was a gun that, before its hotfix, basically like completely redefined what the meta of Counter-Strike was. And that's kind of weird, because Counter-Strike is a game where almost any gun can kill you in one shot anyway, right? You know, the AK is one shot to the head. The M4 is like one shot to the head depending on the distance, depending on the armor, like all that stuff. The AWP, one shot, one kill. The Deagle, even, one shot, one kill to the head. There are loads of things in Counter-Strike that have the same damage number, but the R8 was a little bit different in that it had the same damage number, but it was also incredibly, insanely cheap and didn't rely on you to be precise in order to make it work. The big difference is that even though the damage might have been potentially the same as other weapons, it's that the opportunity to score that damage was way, way higher on the R8 for a ridiculously low price. With a Deagle, you have to make it a headshot in order to kill someone with one click. With an R8, you could do it to the chest and like the hips, and like you could basically shoot them anywhere and it would kill them instantly. It was pretty accurate, even on like second shot accuracy, so you didn't really have to worry about making sure that your one bullet really counted. Relative to the AWP, it's like the AWP has like a long recharge time. Relative to the AK, it's like the AK can shoot a lot, but you have to hit the head. And then after that point, you've got spray patterns that make it so that you're not less likely to hit them a second time, but it's harder to hit them the second time because you have to make a quick reaction. The R8 basically didn't have any of that, and it was cheaper than everything else. This didn't mean that there wasn't any value to buying an AK or an AWP or anything like that, but it did mean that all of the weapons between the two weapons basically became irrelevant. Why would you ever buy a Nova or a Sword Off or a P90 if you could just buy an R8 and just do the same thing more securely, and it was cheaper? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's a case where damage doesn't tell the full story, but damage does tell a pretty significant amount of the story. After that patch, the R8 got nerfed, I think it was twice, and then never got touched again. And the changes were damage numbers on shots to the chest, and I believe increased the thing in Halo Reach. I was born in 1997, can you tell? I say all this because Sean's damage does suck, but it's not abysmal. You know, all of the stats align to him being weaker than other characters, but not substantially weaker. Like, crouching medium kick does the same damage, basically, compared to other characters. I think compared to one of the characters, he even does a little bit more. There's also supers like Super 2 that if you cash out huge. So if his damage is slightly worse, but mainly the same as other characters, that should imply that his damage isn't the problem. But his damage is also still kind of the problem. For example, that Super 2 that lets you cash out big, relative to Ken's Super 3, is a ridiculously long bar. So you have to play more to build all of the meter in order to cash out. And in that process, your opponent is getting more opportunities to play the game. I mean, just like look at Akuma. When Akuma lands crouching medium kick, it's like, what does he do? He does like Tatsu and then he does Shoryu, and it's just like, you're fucked. And in that process, you're getting like moved all the way over the screen. It is a really good combo off of crouching medium kick, even though the damage is like basically the same on just the crouching medium kick by itself. With Sean, you can, if you have super, do some okay damage. If you don't have super, you aren't really doing anything. Now, that does come with a bit of a caveat, because he does do some damage with crouching medium kick into Tatsu. I think if I remember correctly, like even relative to like Ryu's basic combos, the damage is basically like comparable. However, there's a big issue with Sean when it comes to Tatsu and extending combos specifically, in that Tatsu on hit is -1. So if we assume that like the hitbox on crouching medium kick is the exact same, which I think it might be, show the hitbox. It kind of creates a problem where even if the damage was comparable, the relative threat between the two is completely different, because Ryu gets crouching medium kick and it's now his turn. He gets practical advantage even though the damage is relatively the same. Sean gets the hit, gets the damage, and then it's technically your turn. And this is where things start to get really, really messy, and it's why I haven't turned this into a main channel video, on top of kind of just not wanting to make this kind of video on the main channel anymore. How do you quantify damage statistically versus opportunity afforded by the way that the game provides strength? If we go back to Counter-Strike, imagine there is a team that is more likely to lose the round, but has to win less rounds in order to win the game. Which team would be stronger? And the answer to that is, this is a hypothetical. I'm making shit up. This situation isn't real. However, the practical idea is still kind of the same and very relevant to fighting games. Some characters will just win more than other characters, but some characters are doing more damage than other characters with lower opportunity to win more. I mean, that's kind of like the basic idea of like the grappler, right? They're slow and they're big, and so they don't have a lot of opportunities afforded to them, but when they do get that hit, it's really fucking huge. Like, this is why Jinrai Yun is so incredibly powerful, because he doesn't have to win a lot in order to get into a position where he's going to do more damage than you. And then when he is in super, because he has like a super priority on all of his moves, he has just a fucking ridiculous amount of opportunity to win from that position. And then if he fails, he doesn't have to win a lot more to get back into the position where he's winning. That character's fucking stupid. I hate Yun. And to kind of like go a little bit further into this, I want to simplify the situation to a game that actually does exist. Buckshot Roulette. So Buckshot Roulette is a really simple little game in which you are trying to kill the person on the other end of the table before they kill you. A bunch of shells are assigned into a shotgun. Some of them are blanks, some of them are like live rounds. And you take turns either shooting yourself, and if you shoot yourself and it's a blank, you get to take another turn. And if you don't do that, like regardless of whether you shoot yourself or shoot the other guy, the turn passes over and then you get to be shot. It's a game of probability, effectively. And the thing is that very quickly the game evolves into something that isn't just like flipping coins, because the game provides strength to you. Buckshot Roulette, because it's a game about probability, the majority of the ways that it will make you stronger are ways of providing certainty to the situation or providing more opportunity to the situation. There is an item that makes it so that the next shot will just do more damage, but that's like just one way that the game provides strength. So there's an item that lets you just check what is currently actively inside of the chamber, and that makes it so that you have certainty in the action that you're about to take. And that is a form of strength, because it means that you are more likely to advance the score in your advantage. There's another item that makes it so that without seeing what is in the chamber, you can discharge the chamber. So you get to reduce or increase the amount of like probability of the thing that you think is about to happen, but you don't have any control over that. But you still have control. You are still provided strength by the fact that the probability has become more certain. And this is where just a flat damage increase becomes more interesting. Do you want to use a flat damage increase early in a position where you might need to win, Or do you want to provide yourself more certainty in order to make sure that later down the line, you have reduced your chances enough to make it so that you are going to live or die or whatever? Buckshot Roulette is a very interesting, simple game about strength in a way that is not necessarily increasing avatar strength. It's about providing certainty and probability and all this other bullshit that is really interesting, and kind of the way that fighting games work as well. You know, if you look at what frame advantage like practically is, it's this weird mix of being certain that you will act faster than your opponent, and so you can use like stronger moves with less uncertainty, but it's also this idea of being able to take riskier options because you have more certainty in the situation that you can't get beaten out by X, Y, or Z move. This is where like the rock, paper, scissors comparison to fighting games does and doesn't make sense all at the same time, because you're basically boiling out that like scissors will never work, but rock and paper, they're still on the table. But this is a really bad analogy. My name is Jeff, and the thing about Sean is that he is low damage, so he has to win more than his opponent, and low opportunity, because he's like constantly passing over the turn. He struggles to get into positions where he's going to win, but because he's in situations where he's going to win less than his opponent, he has to find more opportunities to win as well. So it becomes this cycle in which the character is falling over his own feet constantly. This isn't to mention more kind of like amorphous advantage situations. For example, like Sean struggles to kind of walk someone to the corner because he doesn't have a fireball and he doesn't have like a really good anti-air. He's kind of dependent on the opponent making a lot of mistakes rather than forcing his advantage on the opponent. You know, if we go back to the Akuma thing from earlier, the reason that his combo is so good isn't just damage, it's the fact that you're also pushing someone towards the corner and you're stripping away all of those options. Sean does crouching medium kick, and now he's a little bit closer and he doesn't have his turn. And the opponent hasn't gone anywhere. You know, his anti-air might, but I don't know what damage his anti-air does, but the anti-air hitbox being so unreliable means that he can't depend on anti-airs in order to play a certain type of way. You know, you can't box someone out the same way that you can with Ken. That isn't to mention issues like the fact that because none of his anti-airs are multi-hit or single hit, you don't have like a mix-up on the very third strike specific situation of like a jump-in parry. There's all of these like little things that aren't necessarily related to damage that make it so that his opportunity is incredibly, incredibly low. However, the way that his opportunity is low is still different from other games, and why I think that fighting games are more enjoyable on like a long-term scale. So if we think about like League of Legends, for example, League of Legends does strength in a very direct sense. What is considered the best character in the game, and they're like E-boy number one, so they look like this and they have like a chest like this and their arms are like for some reason like twink heaven, and also they have a six-pack. And then you have like statistically the worst character in the game at like a base level, and like chances are they are like some fuck crustable fucking creature who's got like a jagged jaw and like little eyes. He looks like this, and he has little like dinosaur hands, but he's also like a weird snake thing because he was designed in season 1 when they weren't afraid to make cool character designs. And his legs look like this for some reason. I think I've just drawn Cogmore, but let's imagine you have the best guy in the game and the worst guy in the game. That's not how you spell worst. It's staying there. The best character in the game and the worst character in the game should, in theory, have a very one-way interaction. If this was a fighting game, it's like, this character will be consistently beating this character out, not because of, like, damage numbers, but because this character just has, like, more opportunity afforded to this character, and maybe more damage numbers as well. In League of Legends, if this character is level 18 and has 6 items, and this character is level 1 and has nothing, this character loses every single time. Because there's so much, like, avatar strength afforded to a League of Legends character, the systems dictate the very large majority of practical interaction. You know, you don't have frame advantage or positions in which one player is moving in a position where they are, like, very practically unable to interact. And so this, like, informs a lot of the way that the game is played. Like, this character, even though he's the best character in the game, is now dependent on all of his teammates showing up and, like, helping him out so that he can go and get farm and eventually, like, bring this number way up. Wow, this is, like, the worst whiteboard use ever. Or, for example, he has to, like, hide underneath his turret the whole time in order to make it so that he can farm and, like, maybe defend himself as he, like, just applies CC while the turret does all the damage. And if we imagine this to be, like, a more conventional laning experience, like, the more strong character is getting more opportunity to farm, like, safely because they're stronger, and because they're getting more farm, they're getting stronger as they get more items and they get more experience. Like, this is a whole thing where avatar strength is just, like, perpetuating itself. And I don't want this to, like, come across as, like, I guess, like, derogatory. This is still, like, a fun, or a potentially fun way of, like, developing gameplay, and there is still genuine strategy to be had in this interaction in which avatar strength dominates the way that the game is played. There is still a game to be played here. But the game is very largely dictated by damage numbers, because there's no middle ground in which you can guarantee avoidance. An auto attack will land. You can't out-juke an auto attack. You don't have a parry. You don't have a block. You don't have these systems that would allow you to take their advantage and turn it against them. And that's kind of what makes Third Strike, and all other fighting games really, like, genuinely interesting and cool to play, and why bottom tiers like Sean can still be really, really fun. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I've kind of forgotten what, like, my ultimate point is. Like, you can look at all of the downsides of Sean, and, like, there's fucking shitloads. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that, like, Sean is secretly a bastion of, like, quality, but you can look at all of these situations and kind of turn them into advantage. Sean being -1 on Tatsu is really, really bad, but the parry system means that so long as you are able to make the correct assumption about how they will respond, or react fast enough to what their next situation is, means that you can turn that disadvantage into a reliable, consistent scenario where you can pick up on a habit and then turn that habit against your opponent. The fact that you have the middle ground in which strength just isn't being decimated from your character by the sheer fact that they've been playing longer than you means that you can just win basically every single interaction. You just have to think way fucking harder than your opponent. The fact that fighting games impart strength onto the player in a way that is direct in damage numbers and frame advantage, but it has this middle ground in which the practical advantage doesn't come into play until you've hit a button, means that there is a very practical sense that there is a battle of the minds somewhere in this cycle. And it's not everywhere, you know. You can't mind game your way to doing a TOD on Sean because the game just won't let you. But there is enough space in the middle, in between all of the interactions, that both of you get to dictate what is happening and why it's happening. And that That makes fighting games cool. It's what makes Sean cool. Because even though you have to work so much fucking harder than all of the other characters in the game, excluding maybe 12, you still can win your match. And that makes fighting games really fucking cool. I'm not saying go out and play Sean. I don't really know what I'm trying to say with this video, or was going to say with this video, other than fighting games are really, really cool. And video games are cool. And I like video games. I think they're pretty fucking neat. Okay, bye.